Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments. In this lesson, you'll be looking at amendments that deal with what happens when you're arrested and things that happen in a courtroom. So the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments are all about things involving what happens if you get arrested, what goes on between you and police, and then what happens once you get into a courtroom. So our objectives are you'll be able to list and describe the rights afforded to Americans. It means the rights that we have under the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments. The questions you'll be able to answer are what rights are guaranteed under the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments, and how do these freedoms affect us today. So all these things revolve around something called due process, which means that the government has to treat us fairly and follow the rules when it comes to being arrested or even being questioned about something that we might have done wrong, to being arrested, and then when we go to jail and or end up in a courtroom. So all of these things deal with what our rights are when it comes to that whole process. Like from, let's say you get pulled over in a car, for example. The Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments cover everything that has to do with what happens when that cop asks you for your license and registration, all the way up to if you are actually arrested, what happens in the courtroom where you're being found guilty or not guilty of something. So that's what all of these things deal with. They're set up to make sure that if we are accused of doing something wrong by a police officer, that the process is fair and that we get to have some rights when it comes to proving that we didn't do something wrong, or even if we did do it wrong, we still get rights when it comes to making sure that we get treated fairly in that process. So let's go through each amendment. I bet you've heard of a lot of this stuff before, especially if you watch like cop TV shows and you've seen some movies and stuff like that. So the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment protects people from being held for committing a crime unless they are properly charged by a grand jury. It means if you do something wrong, you got to be charged with it. You may not be tried twice for the same crime. Double jeopardy. So if you go on trial for murdering someone on October 24th, 2014, you can't go on trial again for that same exact crime. A lot of people think this means like if you, for example, let's say you steal a candy bar in 2013, then you go on trial for it and you're found not guilty. Then now you can just steal candy bars for the rest of your life because you got double jeopardy protection and you can just do whatever you want because you've already been tried or put on trial for stealing a candy bar. It's not about the actual crime that you commit, it's that specific day, like that specific crime. So just because you go on trial for doing something wrong once doesn't mean you can just do whatever that action is for the rest of your life. And you don't have to, this is what the Fifth Amendment's famous for, you don't have to testify against yourself in court, or in general really. It's called self-incrimination. So you don't have to talk, you don't have to say that you did something wrong. You don't have to say anything that's going to make you look bad, essentially. You've probably heard it as, I plead the Fifth, if you ever heard people say that. You're saying, I'm going to be silent on this, I'm not going to talk about it. Because if you, and that deals with doing anything that's going to incriminate yourself, meaning it's going to make the cop or whoever's talking to you realize that you did something wrong. If the cop says to you, was Joe here 10 minutes ago? You don't say, I plead the Fifth to that, because that's nothing to do with what you did or didn't do wrong. That's just a question about something that happened in a situation. So all of these things in the Fifth Amendment, they get boiled into what's called your Miranda rights. They come from a court case called Miranda versus Arizona. I'll read the Miranda rights to you on the next slide. It's not a good thing to have the Miranda rights read to you, usually, because it usually means you're under arrest, but I'll read them to you just so you know what they are. So there's a guy in Arizona named Ernesto Miranda, and he was charged and convicted with kidnapping and rape. He was identified in a police lineup and confessed during the police confessions. Now, he didn't know that you didn't have to testify against yourself in court. He went on trial and he was a witness against himself. So he basically admitted to everything while he was in court, and that's the reason that he got found guilty. He didn't know he didn't have to do that. He didn't know he could be quiet about it. So now, because of that court case, we have the Miranda warning, or the Miranda rights. I'll read it to you real quick. It says, remember, this is not something you want read to you usually. It says, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you? With these rights in mind, do you wish to speak to me? That's your Miranda warning or your Miranda rights. These are the rights that you have that are laid out in these amendments that we're going over. And now, when a police officer does arrest you, he has to provide you with these so you know what your rights are from that point forward. The Sixth Amendment. This deals more with if you are actually arrested and put on trial. You have the right to a speedy trial, meaning that the case can't take like 10 years to do it. It's supposed to be quicker than that. Like if you're in jail, that doesn't even mean that you're guilty yet. You're just awaiting trial. So you're not supposed to be in jail for more than a year without a trial. The trial is supposed to be public, meaning that there's other people in the room and it's made public record. This way, if they do it in private, people would be able to just kind of mess with the proceedings and things like that. So they have to be public so people can make sure that what's going on in the courtroom is okay. The jury is supposed to be impartial. That means that they're not holding anything against you. They're just looking at the facts. So if a jury thinks that you're guilty just because of the color of your skin, they're not being impartial. They're not supposed to use skin color, or if you're a man, or if you're a woman, or if you're Christian, or if you're a Muslim. They can't use any of that stuff against you. They're only supposed to use what the facts of the case are. You're allowed to have witnesses, and you can ask the witnesses questions. So if there's a witness, there's somebody that's saying that yes, you did commit that crime, you're allowed to question that witness and talk to them in court. So if they say something about you that makes you look bad, you can ask them questions to try and get your story across. And also, you're allowed to have a lawyer. That's the sixth. The Seventh Amendment. This is one that deals with civil cases. A civil case is like when you sue somebody. That's probably how you guys know it. So, in a civil trial differs from a criminal trial. A civil trial is when someone sues someone else. A criminal trial is when the state tries to convict someone of a crime. So the Seventh Amendment just says that you can have a jury trial in those kind of cases as well. So in most cases that you guys probably heard of, they're criminal cases. They're cases where somebody has possibly done something wrong, and you're trying to find out if they're guilty or not guilty. A civil case is like what you see on, like if you ever watched like Judge Joe Brown or Judge Judy. Those are civil cases because they're cases between two people, and one of them is usually suing the other. So why is that one important? Because in a civil case, regular people like you and me, get to decide who's right or who's wrong in a case rather than the government. So that power lies with us, the people that get jury duty and have to decide things, rather than the government. The government doesn't have much power when it comes to determining guilty and not guilty, or who's right and who's wrong. So why are all these amendments important? They're important because they're the things that protect us from just getting thrown in jail and just being there for the rest of our lives. They're the things that if we do get under suspicion of doing something wrong, we have rights. We have a way to prove that we didn't do it wrong. And even if we did do something wrong, we have rights to make sure that we get to have our side of the story said. So I hope that you never have to use any of these rights, but they still are very important to know. Don't forget to answer the questions underneath this video. If you have any questions, please reach out. If not, good luck.